Welcome back to the deep dive. Big ideas are kind of our thing around here, and this time we're diving into the essays of Michel de Montaigne,
Ah, Michel de Montaigne.
a thinker from the 1500s
Okay,
who was way ahead of his time.
I like it.
Now I know what you might be thinking.
What's that?
Essays from centuries ago.
Yeah,
How could that possibly be relevant to my life today?
right.
Well,
Yeah, that's where Montaigne surprises us. He was
mhm.
grappling with these timeless questions about life, death, happiness, and how we understand ourselves in the world.
Hmm.
And trust me, his insights are so sharp, so witty, they'll resonate even in our crazy, fast-paced 21st century.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so to kick things off, let's talk about this concept Montaigne called the power of custom.
Okay.
He was fascinated by how people blindly follow the trends of their time, even when those trends are constantly changing.
He even compares people's opinions to a weathercock,
Oh,
spinning around with every gust of wind. What's fascinating is how he connects this to something we all experience today. Social media. Ooh, think about how trends explode online, how quickly we form opinions based on what we see often without even realizing we're being influenced.
that's a great point. It makes me think about how many of my so-called strong opinions are actually just things I've absorbed from the online world.
Right.
Are we
And
really individuals, or are we just products of our algorithms?
it's a question worth pondering.
Hmm.
Are you aware of the customs that shape your life?
Uh,
The unspoken rules you follow without even thinking?
whoa, that's a deep one. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about another fascinating idea from Montaigne, the illusion of our senses.
Okay.
He was incredibly skeptical of how much we can truly know about the world just through what we see, hear, touch, taste, and smell.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Haven't you ever had a moment where your senses seem to trick you?
Oh, yeah.
Like when you're really tired and you think you see something out of the corner of your eye? Or when a song brings back a rush of emotions tied to a specific memory?
Oh, totally. Like when I haven't had my coffee yet, everything seems louder and more annoying.
Ah,
But seriously, if our senses can be fooled so easily, can we ever be truly certain about anything?
that's the million-dollar question.
Mm.
Montaigne didn't claim to have all the answers, but he suggests that true certainty comes from within, from self-knowledge.
Hmm. And that brings us to another key theme, the challenge of self-knowledge.
Right.
Montaigne was a big believer in introspection and really examining your own thoughts and feelings.
Uh-huh.
He actually made a habit of writing them down, kind of like journaling.
Exactly. Centuries before mindfulness became a buzzword, Montaigne was practicing it.
Hmm.
He believed that understanding yourself, even the less than flattering parts,
Hmm.
is the key to navigating the complexities of life.
So we've got the power of custom, the illusions of our senses, and the challenge of self-knowledge.
Yeah.
These are some pretty heavy topics. But Montaigne didn't shy away from the big, scary stuff either, like death. He actually believed that contemplating our own mortality could help us live more fully.
He had this idea that it's not the act of dying that's truly frightening, but the fear and anxiety we build up around it.
Yeah.
We spend so much time worrying about death that we forget to actually live.
Hmm.
What if instead of fearing death, we used it as a lens to appreciate the preciousness of each moment?
I've actually had a personal experience with that. A few years ago, I had a health scare that really forced me to confront my own mortality. It was terrifying at first, but you know what?
What's that?
It also made me realize how much I was taking for granted. I started appreciating simple things more, spending time with loved ones, enjoying nature, even just savoring a good cup of coffee.
That's exactly what Montaigne was getting at. By accepting the reality of our own mortality, we can actually find a deeper appreciation for life.
Okay, so Montaigne was all about self-knowledge, facing our fears, and living in the moment. But he also had some pretty refreshing thoughts on how to actually be happy. He believed that accepting our imperfections and limitations was crucial to finding contentment.
Hmm.
What I loved was his story about managing his own household.
Mm-hmm.
It showed how accepting imperfections brought him more peace.
He realized that trying to control every little detail just led to frustration.
Right.
Imagine trying to run a household in the 16th century with no modern conveniences.
Oh my God.
But instead of stressing, Montaigne learned to let go and accept that things wouldn't always go perfectly.
He was basically a 16th century advocate for going with the flow, right?
I love it.
In today's world where we're bombarded with messages about needing to be perfect successful and have it all the times, Montaigne's message of embracing our flaws is more relevant than ever.
It's about giving ourselves permission to be human, to be messy and imperfect.
Yeah.
How can we apply this to our lives?
Hmm.
Can you think of an area where you're striving for perfection, maybe to your own detriment?
Definitely. I'm a total perfectionist when it comes to my work, and sometimes it paralyzes me. I'm so afraid of making a mistake that I end up procrastinating or overthinking everything. It's exhausting. Maybe I need to channel my inner Montaigne and embrace the good enough.
I like it.
But speaking of embracing imperfection, Montaigne also had a lot to say about the importance of true friendship.
Okay.
He believed that real friends are those who challenge us, who aren't afraid to be honest, even if it means causing a little discomfort.
He contrasted true friends with flatterers who only tell you what you want to hear. Think of a true friend as a mirror, reflecting back to you both your strengths and weaknesses. Flatterers, on the other hand, are like funhouse mirrors, distorting your image and preventing you from seeing yourself clearly.
So, how do we cultivate those authentic connections, those mirror like friendships in a world that often feels superficial?
It's something to really think about.
It is.
Absolutely. And speaking of being challenged, Montaigne also had some very strong opinions about the burdens of obligation. He believed that true freedom came from self-reliance and went to great lengths to avoid owing anyone anything.
He even refused to borrow money from a friend even though he needed it.
Wow.
He'd rather be in debt to his tailor than to a friend because he didn't want to risk their relationship. That's pretty extreme. I wonder if it's even possible to be truly self-reliant in today's interconnected world. At what point does independence become isolation?
Those are excellent questions, and ones that Montaigne himself seems to have grappled with. There's a delicate balance between self-reliance and recognizing when we need to lean on others.
Right.
It's about discerning when to stand on your own 2 feet and when to accept a helping hand.
This brings us to one of the biggest themes running through all of Montaigne's work: the search for meaning.
Right.
He lived in a time of immense upheaval, plagues, wars, religious conflicts. It's no wonder he was trying to find something to hold on to.
And while he didn't offer easy answers, he found solace in nature literature and his own inner world. He encouraged introspection, observation, and a deep appreciation for the beauty and complexity of life, even amidst its challenges. It's a reminder that meaning isn't something we find out there in the world, but something we cultivate within ourselves.
So in this world of constant change and uncertainty, where can we find that lasting meaning and purpose?
Ah, that is the question, isn't it? Maybe it's not about finding a definitive answer, but about embracing the journey of exploration itself. We'll delve deeper into that in the next part of our deep dive.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground already. We've explored Montaigne's thoughts on the power of custom, the illusions of our senses, the challenges of self-knowledge, and the importance of embracing our imperfections. And that's just the beginning. We'll be back in part 2 to unpack Montaigne's surprisingly candid and often hilarious observations about love, sex, and marriage. Trust me, you won't want to miss it.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Last time we explored some pretty heavy concepts from Montaigne.
Yeah.
Custom, self-knowledge, even death.
It got pretty intense.
But don't worry, we're going to lighten things up a bit now
Okay, good.
and explore his surprisingly frank thoughts on love, sex, and marriage.
I have to admit, I was a little surprised by how candid he was.
Oh, yeah.
This was back in the 1500s, remember? And he wasn't afraid to get into the nitty-gritty of human relationships.
And that's what makes him so fascinating.
Yeah.
He approached these topics with a blend of philosophical insight and real-world observation. He saw love as a powerful force, but not always in a fairy tale, happily ever after kind of way.
He actually compared love to an illness, a fever that can cloud our judgment and make us act irrationally.
Interesting.
He even suggests that the less we know someone, the more we tend to idealize them.
Oh, that's so true.
Makes you think about all those whirlwind romances that fizzle out once the initial mystery fades, right?
Montaigne noticed how cultural norms shape our ideas of love. He even points out that back in his day, men were discouraged from showing too much affection for their wives. It makes you wonder how much of what we believe about love is actually genuine and how much is just what society tells us to think.
That's a great point. It makes me think about all those romantic comedies and love songs we're bombarded with, setting up all these expectations. Like, how do we separate genuine love from those societal scripts we've internalized?
It's a lifelong process of self-discovery. But to answer your earlier question about whirlwind romances, Montaigne believed that true love goes beyond that initial spark. It requires communication, understanding, and a willingness to navigate the inevitable challenges that arise.
So he wasn't all doom and gloom about love.
Not at all.
What about marriage? I know he was married himself.
He was, and he definitely had some strong opinions on the subject. Remember how Montaigne was all about embracing imperfection? Well, that extended to his views on marriage, too.
Hmm.
He acknowledged that it could be a source of both joy and frustration, and that maintaining a strong marriage required effort, compromise, and open communication.
He also emphasized the importance of choosing the right partner. He had this great quote, "A good marriage would be between a blind wife and a deaf husband."
Oh my gosh.
I think he was trying to say that sometimes a little bit of selective hearing and ignoring can go a long way in a marriage.
Maybe. But beyond the jokes, he was really emphasizing the importance of tolerance and understanding in a relationship.
Okay, we've talked about love and marriage,
Huh.
but I have to ask, what about his thoughts on sex?
Let's just say Montaigne was a man of his time,
Okay,
and some of his opinions on sexuality might seem outdated to us today.
I can imagine.
For example, he believed that men had a stronger sex drive than women. But even within that historical context, he had some progressive ideas, like challenging the double standard that existed around infidelity.
Hmm.
He argued that it was unfair to judge men and women differently for the same behavior.
So he was pushing back against some of the hypocrisy of his time. I find that really interesting. He also talked about the importance of pleasure in a sexual relationship, not just viewing it as purely for procreation.
Right. He seemed to be grappling with finding a balance between the very strict religious views on sexuality at the time and a more humanistic approach that acknowledged the naturalness of desire.
It seems like Montaigne was really ahead of his time in so many ways. So we've talked about love, marriage, and even sex. But what about dealing with the more difficult aspects of life, the inevitable moments of hardship and loss?
That's where Montaigne's wisdom really shines. He had his fair share of challenges, plagues, the loss of close friends, even a chronic illness.
So last time we left off talking about how Montaigne experienced some serious challenges in his life. It seems like he really went through it.
He did, but instead of becoming bitter or defeated, he used those experiences as opportunities for growth and self-discovery.
Mm.
He believed that facing adversity, those curveballs life throws at us,
Yeah.
could actually make us stronger and more resilient.
He actually compares it to trees that grow in exposed, windy locations. They develop stronger roots than trees that grow in sheltered areas because they have to withstand those harsh conditions.
Exactly. It's a beautiful analogy for the human experience.
Yeah, it is.
We often try to avoid pain and discomfort,
Right.
but those very challenges can be the source of our greatest strength.
It's like working out a muscle. The more you challenge it, the stronger it becomes.
What's
So how do we actually put this into practice?
Hmm.
When we're in the middle of a tough time, it's hard to see it as a learning experience. It just feels, hard.
That's true. But Montaigne had some practical advice for dealing with those inevitable moments of suffering. He believed in finding healthy ways to express your emotions, like writing, talking to someone you trust, or even just spending time in nature.
Yeah.
He was also a big advocate for perspective taking.
What do you mean by that?
He encouraged people to zoom out and see their problems in a larger context. Your suffering is real and valid, but it's also just one small part of a much larger human story. It's not about minimizing your pain, but about finding a way to contextualize it so it doesn't completely overwhelm you.
That makes sense. It's like when you're feeling stressed about something and then you talk to a friend who's going through something even tougher. It doesn't erase your problems, but it helps you see them in a new light.
Right. And sometimes finding a little humor in this situation can help too, without being disrespectful.
Yeah.
Montaigne actually said, "The most certain sign of wisdom is constant cheerfulness." Now, he wasn't saying we should pretend to be happy all the time, but that cultivating a sense of lightness, even when things are tough, can help us stay balanced and resilient.
I love that. It's not about denying the hard stuff, but about choosing to focus on what brings us joy and finding ways to maintain a sense of perspective.
And this leads to one of Montaigne's most crucial insights,
Yeah.
the importance of accepting what we cannot change. So much of our suffering comes from fighting against reality, from wishing things were different.
Right.
But true peace, he believed, comes from surrendering to the present moment and making the best of whatever situation we find ourselves in.
That sounds a lot like the serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot, change the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
It's a timeless wisdom, isn't it?
It is.
Montaigne understood that fighting against reality is a losing battle. It's only when we surrender to what is that we can truly begin to find peace.
It's like when you're stuck in traffic. You can get angry and frustrated, but it's not going to make the cars move any faster. The only thing you can control is your own reaction.
Exactly. It's about choosing your battles wisely. And sometimes the wisest choice is to simply let go.
So after diving deep into Montaigne's world, what does this all mean for Us, the listeners.
Well, Montaigne reminds us that life is a journey, and it's not always going to be easy.
Yeah.
There will be ups and downs, moments of joy and moments of sorrow, but it's in those very challenges that we have the opportunity to learn to grow and to become more fully ourselves.
Hmm.
He encourages us to be curious, to question our assumptions, and to live with intention. And maybe most importantly, he reminds us to be kind to ourselves along the way.
It's like he's giving us permission to be human, to embrace all the messiness and complexity of life. It's okay to not have all the answers. What matters is staying open to learning, growing, and evolving.
So the next time you find yourself feeling lost, overwhelmed, or uncertain, remember Montaigne's advice. Take a deep breath, observe the world around you, and don't be afraid to look within. You might just find the wisdom and resilience you need to navigate life's complexities and to cultivate a sense of meaning and purpose even amidst the chaos.
Well said. A big thank you to our expert for sharing your incredible insights on Montaigne. And to you, our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it as thought-provoking and inspiring as we did. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep embracing the beautiful complexity of being human.